We are cheap as a currency, so the fact that it's softer but it's not collapsing, I think is quite right. The market is correctly, I think, assuming that the fears of that no deal, better than a bad deal, hard Brexit have surely gone. And the market is anticipating that if there is either an extended transitional arrangement or a much softer Brexit than we looked at last week, then actually there is a floor under the pound.
We can look at how sterling's traded actually against the dollar over the last week or so. There we go. So that's the big cliff edge at 10 o'clock on Thursday evening. As you say, I mean, there is a bit of a floor appearing there. Are you reasonably confident then about this soft Brexit theory?
I'm fairly confident, but I have to put it in the context of, despite what your reporter has just said, can we really be sure that Mrs May leads us into the negotiations and concludes the negotiations? The arithmetic of average of 4 by-elections a year means this is a government that may not last the 2 years of the negotiations. And that, I think, is the thing that the markets over time will begin to worry about. Right now, the economy is okay, a little bit softer, but no disaster. And the currency, I think, rightly reflects that. But it's more in the medium and longer term that I have some concerns.
Now, let's talk briefly about the FTSE before we talk about those longer concerns. I mean, I think we can show the FTSE here over the last couple of... there we go, we're going back a week there. Big spike there. I mean, this is almost a binary trade, isn't it? Sterling falls, FTSE goes up. But is it really that simple?
Well, in the very short term, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Very simple, as we all know. 75% plus of the FTSE 100 earnings come from outside the UK. So simple translation effect means that pound weakness, the shares will re-rate. But it is, that's a knee-jerk. It's more in the medium term about, back to looking at what the Fed's going to do this week with interest rates. What's the global economy looking like? Clearly much better news from Europe. The US data's still a bit mixed. We've got this curious situation where the bond market is more or less siding on the side of things are going to get softer. And the equity market is pretty much saying, no, things look all right. And at some point in the coming months, we've got to resolve which one of those is right.
Now, looking at the longer term, you've got some real concerns now about the way the economy is going to trade over the next few years, over the way companies are going to be treated by the government.
Yes, I do think this is a very significant part of a turning point, this election. Because it really brought home, for 20 years now, we've had a growing wealth disparity in the country between the older and the younger. So for the first time in living memory, or for longer, the younger generations can actually not look forward to being better off than their parents and the previous generations. And I think they've stood up and voted for a different type of government. Most of them were not around during the 70s to know what some of the issues around socialist government were, and the high inflation that was around at the time. And to them, the Corbyn proposition looks really pretty appealing. So I think both Conservatives and the Labour Party, but clearly the Conservative government, has really got to start to put in place policies that will address this disparity of wealth and incomes between the older and the younger generation.
And that's going to mean capital losing out at the expense of Labour, presumably.
I think it is part of this huge shift we had since '79. Everything was going away from Labour in favour of capital. It started going a little bit the other way with Osborne's introducing a minimum wage. And I think this will continue really quite aggressively in the coming years, and it has to. Labour has had too little of the cake. Capital has been, I think, in its tendency to an excess. And I think, a whole range of policies, whether it's, don't anticipate further cuts in corporation tax, will there be more analysis of things like share buybacks and so on.